Let's now go back to our senior political analyst, Marwan Bishara. Marwan, Yahya Sinwar is a man that Netanyahu has said he will not end this war until he is dead. But it sounds like previous assassination attempts haven't gone particularly well.
And even if they did go well, so-called go well, and they did kill and assassinate a number of leaders, what we've seen from Hamas over the past 30 years, at least since the early 1990s, is that every time they get rid of one Hamas leader, a more hardcore Hamas leader shows up in their place. And we've seen so many assassinations of first and second tier Hamas leaders over the years, notably in the 1990s. And I remember doing a chronology of the assassinations of Hamas leaders. And what you had every time is that Israel assassinates Hamas leader, and then there's retaliation and response. Israelis die, and then another retaliation happens against Hamas leaders. And Hamas keep producing these leaders, especially the field leaders, like there's no tomorrow. I've seen one of those studies that says a lot of the people, and actually there are declarations recently, a lot of the people who are now serving as a hardcore part of the Hamas striking force in Gaza today are the orphans of people killed by Israel. So the assassination policy of Israel has always been more in terms of revenge and more in terms of public policy to convince the Israeli public they are doing something about something. But in fact, strategically speaking, it has always backfired, either in terms of major retaliations against Israelis or in terms another generation of more hardcore Hamas leaders showing up. Sinwar is one example. I mean, Sinwar has spent 22 years in Israeli prison. And clearly the the killing in that sense of his family members, including his children, certainly led to his own radicalization. The same thing with Abu Ubaida, the field commander. Again, the assassination of his family members, or the killing of his family. In that sense, it wasn't collateral damage. They tried to get Abu Ubaida, but they got his children. They tried to get Sinwar, but they got the children. So I think in general, assassination policy over the past 30 years have only backfired, have not led to anything good, and have only led to more and more Hamas retaliations and the emergence of new generation of hardcore leaders. See, this is the thing about it, right, Anastasia, is that Israel continues to take on the same policy again and again, and it fails again and again, but yet it continues to repeat it. Which really begs the question.
Well, you were just saying a few minutes ago that Israel has potentially misjudged Hamas's capabilities, well, their military capabilities as these street battles continue. What do you make of how much ground they've taken so far? How is their offensive actually going, given that it seems to have stalled somewhat?
Look, in the end of the day, they have the power. They have the firepower. And they have apparently, unending support by the United States in terms of ammunitions and the likes. So I think sooner or later, they will flatten Gaza if need be, and they will get to the Hamas. And already, they are so worried and scared of getting into the tunnels, they are destroying the tunnels.
Yeah.
And just open parentheses here and say, they're probably killing a lot of hostages, a lot of captives. Israel today clearly has declared its Hannibal doctrine, so-called unwritten Hannibal doctrine, and clearly are sacrificing the captives in the hands of Hamas because they want to launch and continue with this war, the land war in Gaza. According to recent reports, like in the Wall Street Journal today, they say, based on Israeli assessments, that much of Hamas's core force remains intact, which is kind of unbelievable when you consider something like 11,000 civilian deaths.
35 days in.
Tens of thousands of civilian casualties. And according to Israeli sources in the Wall Street Journal today, that still much of Hamas's core force remains intact. But the Israelis are going to continue. And they do, as I said, have the firepower. And they did, if you remember, recruit or recall 300,000 soldiers. So the problem is not so much of whether they will end up having a mission accomplished in the immediate run, because we've seen other mission accomplished, right? 20 years ago in Iraq, and we saw what happened after that. So they might be able to destroy it more and more and flatten Gaza, as they continuously say, which is a very inhumane, concept, as it were. But they are persistent, and they got stuck in this. They are lost in this because of their false assumptions, because of their also false political assumptions that they could just lock in Gaza and throw the key and go to have tourism in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, that this will all be fine. Well, apparently it can't all be fine. And it's not all rosy because you decided to be rosy. And this, just final note on this, this contrasts so much, because this is the only image that just sort of, struck me so much, is only a few weeks ago, in September, late September, Prime Minister Netanyahu was making this boastful speech at the United Nations, showing us map of these flowery strawberry fields in the Middle East, centered around Israel, the magnificent democracy, one and only. And suddenly, the strawberry fields are turning into killing fields in Gaza, where Israel is basically taking its revenge because of its utter foolishness and stupidity, thinking, politically speaking, that it could simply dismiss the Palestinians, that it could make the Palestinians invisible and only bridge with some rich Arab countries and forget about the question of occupation. Without resolving the question of occupation, it's not going to get anywhere.
Well, we're listening to the consequences of all of those assumptions right now. That ongoing gunfire going literally as we speak in Gaza, and a very dark Gaza that remains under siege. Marwan Bishara, thank you for joining me again.
Thank you.